The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
I hope you're having a wonderful start to the week and you've had a great weekend. Goodness me, it has been a bit of a scorcher, hasn't it? I'm really delighted to be sat in a cool studio this morning. I am live in Inspire FM. You can catch the conversation on Facebook Live. My guest this morning, which I'm going to be sharing who they are very, very shortly, will be via Zoom. And hopefully they're staying cool wherever they're sat this morning too. Now, just a few tips for folk in staying cool. It's always a good thing to keep out of the heat if you can. I understand today it's going to be quite hot. We're going over 25 degrees today, I believe. So if you have to go outside, then stay in the shade, especially between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Make sure you're wearing sunscreen. I know this is a topical conversation because just because you're South Asian or whatever culture you are listening in from today, always wear sunscreen. It's advisable to do so. Protect your skin. And brown people have a tendency of thinking, oh, we're brown, we don't need to wear sunscreen. Yes, you do. So do wear sunscreen, please. Get some advice on the best factor for you. A hat and light clothes is always good, and try and avoid exercise or an activity that makes you hotter. Try and cool yourself down by having cold food and drinks. Avoid caffeine and hot drinks, and have a cool shower or put cool water on your skin or clothes. Keep your living space cool. Close windows during the day and open them at night when the temperature outside has gone down. And electric fans can help if the temperature is below 35 degrees. Now check the temperature of rooms, especially where people at higher risk live and sleep. So do keep an eye on your elderly relatives, children and your pets because they are very vulnerable in this heat. I made myself a paper fan yesterday and it was the best thing ever. So paper fans are always great, or grab yourself a fan, those really pretty ones that you can get from the shops, and keep that with you. Some people are now carrying umbrellas as well outdoors, that keeps you protected from the heat. But always, as we say on the show, get medical advice when required. We always want to give you advice and guidance, but always go to the experts as well. Folks, today's show, as always, I'm going to be joined by an absolutely fantastic guest today who's going to be inspiring us with their creative journey. Now, the Urban Cube show is a celebration of Muslim arts and lifestyle and change makers who are local, national and international. On today's show, we're going to be talking to a familiar voice. You may have heard them across the book club show with Imrana, and that gives you a bit of a tip of what the conversation is going to be on today. Now, today is also, before we move on to our guest, today is also International Youth Day, and this is held each year on the 12th of August and is an initiative that celebrates the qualities of young people and that recognises the challenges that today's youth can face. So, if the question I have to you guys is, if you could speak to your 16-year-old self, what advice would you give? What advice would you give? Now, the summer holidays, because we're definitely in the middle of them now, is a interesting time for parents and young people trying to keep their youngsters occupied and engaged and inspired and possibly keep them out of trouble. If you've got any activities that you're doing with your young people, please do share with them on the show with us today. And do keep an ear out to the Rise and Shine show or the Inspire FM Facebook pages on activities that are happening to keep young people engaged. It's always good to share and find out what's going on. We are a community, and we do need to keep an eye on our young people. And I think more of that needs to be done, I believe. Back in the old days, the good old days, in the summer holidays, your neighbourhood, your neighbours would be keeping an eye on us or the kids on the street. There was this village mentality, and it seemed like a safe space to be. I'd be popping into my neighbour's house willy-nilly. The doors were always open. But nowadays it seems to be that isn't the case. We're a little bit more cautious and conscientious. But it'd be great to find out what picnics are happening, what's going on, where we can get our young people involved in. Do share with us on the show today on 07779 481822. Something else that I saw was very interesting this morning was keeping myself cool, or other people keeping themselves cool. The main go-to is always ice cream, right? I love the summer. I mean, I don't need an excuse to have ice cream. I will have ice cream whenever I want. There is no rule to when you should have ice cream. I've had ice cream for breakfast I know once. That's a bit crazy. But I have a particular flavour that I like, that I enjoy. Okay? And I'm quite, I have a firm favourite. I'm going to ask you guys, what's your firm favourite ice cream? Of late, it's mango kulfi. That's my go-to. But trust me, there's been some quite unusual flavours that have been coming through, right? I don't know how you feel about curry and mint ice cream, guys. Curry and mint ice cream. Are you vibing with that? Are you vibing with that? I'm going to have to ask my guest whether she's vibing with curry and mint ice cream, and whether she's got a popular flavour, a firm favourite. What's your favourite ice cream flavour, folks? Do tell us on 07779 481822. Maybe you've created a concoction in your kitchen that you'd like to share with us, or there's a flavour that you've experienced like, yes, I need to share that with the rest of the world. Today is International Youth Day, folks. We are going to be kind of inspiring our listeners this morning with book reading activities. Yes, we're going to be talking about books, and we're going to be talking about summer book reads on today's show, because whilst I was growing up, I think that's what I kept myself occupied in, is a good book. And today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a book critic and a podcaster. She is the founder of The Diverse Bookshelf, and recently she celebrated a year of her podcasting at a wonderful event in Luton. And she is joining me today to talk to us about her love for books, her journey as a podcaster, a book critic, and we'll also be catching up with inspirational reads and also some stories and experiences people have had or are seeing across the country as well, that have hit the news. So without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to be joined this morning by no other than Samia Aziz. Assalamu alaikum, Samia.
Walaikum salam, Shamiza. Thanks so much for having me back on the show.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Fellow podcaster. I mean, it's just a treat to have you join us, Samia. I've been talking about a lot of things, but firstly, my question to you is, how are you staying cool in this weather?
Well, I don't plan to be outside much today at all. And we have an electric fan in all our rooms, basically. So that's what I intend to do, drinking lots of water, wearing light and breezy clothing, and just staying out of the sun until the evening.
Oh, I like that. Stay out of the sun till the evening. And talk to me about your light breezy clothes. Is there a particular style that you go for?
I mean, I like wearing linen trousers and like cotton shirts, just stuff that's like really soft, but also like that tends to be quite baggy, just so that it lets even more air in and doesn't cling to your skin.
Of course. And in this weather, for Muslim women, trying to find modest fashion can be quite tricky. Is it tricky or is it easy? What do you do? How do you get around this?
I think it's a lot easier now than it was a few years ago. There's a lot more options out there. I mean, my go-to, to be honest, is going to desi clothing, because I feel like in this weather, nothing fits and feels better than a nice cotton lawn shalwar kameez.
I am feeling you, lady. This is, you're talking my language. It totally is. When they invented that, they got it so right. They got it so right for our sisters, mashallah. And you know what? I do keep an eye out on what you're wearing, Samia, because you do wear some lovely, lovely desi clothes, desi attire. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about desi things in a moment. But I wanted to ask you a question. I've been talking about ice cream flavors. Samia, do you have a particular go-to ice cream flavor?
I quite like mint choc chip.
Okay. That's interesting.
And something, I mean, I'm a really big, I love chocolate. So normally like anything with chocolate also is good.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. What do you think of curry and mint ice cream, if you like
God.
mint?
No, I was cringing with you saying it. Like, I just feel like leave curry alone. Just let's just have it as curry. I don't think that would taste very good at all.
I know, like, why? Why?
Exactly. There's really no need.
No disrespect to those people that are vibing with that, but nah, I'm going to give that one a miss. Keep curry in the handi, in the pot, okay?
Yes, exactly.
And, rice and chapatis, roti, that's a combination, I think. Not really ice and curry. But you know what? Each their own. Each their own. I mean, what do you guys think if you're listening in? Do tell me what your thoughts are. Do you think curry and mint ice cream is a combination that works? Do you have any other suggestions? We'd love to hear what your favourite flavour is. Your go-to flavour on 07779 481 822. Today is Youth International Day. It's a celebration of basically inspiring young people and providing initiatives and for young people to recognise the challenges that young people can actually face today. I'm joined by an absolutely wonderful guest who is really making a mark on the podcasting circuit. She's celebrated a year of her journey in the world of podcasting with the Diverse Bookshelf. She's a book critic and a remarkable voice and inspiration that I think a lot of young people will be super inspired by, and not just young people, cross-generational on today's show. I'm speaking about no other than the absolutely wonderful Samia Aziz, who you would have heard not just on my show, but also the book club show as well with Imran and Mahmood. On today's show, we are talking about summer diverse book reads, and a good book and some ice cream. Well, maybe not dripping the ice cream on the book. And a good cool drink is my go-to, definitely when I'm out and about and trying to relax, maybe on a holiday, so forth. So, Samia, wow, always a treat to have you. And thank you so very much for joining us today. Firstly, I want to say congratulations.
Thank you. It's actually 2 years of the podcast now.
Fantastic. That's wonderful to hear. But you marked it at an annual event. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It was super great. So it was just an event bringing together readers, and some authors were there as well. And it was just a chance to reflect on the podcast, but also we had sort of like a live open podcast discussion where we talked about representation, what we look for in literature, what are some of the things that we are hopeful to see. And I invited people to share things that they're reading, that they're really interested in doing. And it was just a really fun and open and warm event. Mainly women attended, but it was open to everybody. And it was just, yeah, it was great.
Sounds absolutely amazing. And you marked that in Luton, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you're local to us in Luton, which is amazing. What was the highlight of the event for you?
I think it's so hard, such a hard question, because I think soaking up the atmosphere, like, because it was in Luton, it was the first time that I'd done an event in Luton like that. Last year, I celebrated the first year and at a restaurant in London. And so I was a little bit nervous, but there were so many new faces. And I think just, as people were leaving, everybody, said bye to me. And they were just so pleased with how the event went. A lot of people said, sometimes literature events can feel so pretentious, but this was so warm and fun and non-judgmental, and it felt like such a safe space. And I think that meant so much.
Sounds absolutely wonderful. And I'd read the reviews of the event as well, and the pictures look amazing. And I think this is the bit I failed to mention. It's the fact that you brought it for the first time to Luton, and this is what made it quite exciting for me. So thank you for doing that, and I'm sure I'm hopeful that you'll be doing more in Luton.
Yeah, hopefully. I think there's definitely appetite. So let's see.
And we'll be observing and watching. So awesome. Now, tell us about your journey towards podcasting. How did it all begin?
I think it started off actually back in 2020 when I decided to set up an Instagram account where I was going to be talking about books. So there is this corner of the internet full of people talking about the books that they're reading. And it's amazing. It's so wonderful connecting with other readers. And I just felt like I wanted to take things further. And I'd done a couple of book club style events and Instagram lives, especially during lockdown. And I just felt like there's such appetite to have discussions with authors about the work that they're doing. Because I think, we can read a book in a matter of, depending on how quick a reader you are, people can read books within hours or days or weeks or months. But often an author has been working on a book for years. Sometimes it's like 15 years in the making or 10 years in the making. And so there's so much behind the scenes that we just don't know and we just don't think about or we miss. So I really wanted to be able to have those conversations. But the other thing is, I think, I've been a reader for so long, and there has always been a focus on a very particular kind of author, often a very successful white author. And so what it means is that there's so many authors writing amazing books that we just don't know about. So what I hope I can do with the show is to showcase more people and bring more authors and books to the attention of listeners and readers who may not have otherwise heard of them.
How amazing. What a fabulous platform, and super exciting as well. It's been wonderful hearing about why the initiative has come about. What has the journey been for you? Speaking to the authors, has there been a highlight for you?
It's been nothing short of amazing. It's been so brilliant, and I think about how much I've personally grown as a person from learning from these authors that I'm speaking to. But I think also when you are, and Shamiza, you'll relate to this, like when you are presenting something or you are conducting interviews, you're forced to become slightly more concise in your speech. You're forced to think about things differently. And I think that growth that I've experienced has been absolutely amazing. And it's been so wonderful, like connecting with authors that whose work I've been supporting for years, trying to track down authors that I really want to get on the show. Like it's super fun. And I have interviewed, I'd say, over 75 authors now. So there's
Wow.
84 episodes out in the world, and there's been a couple of repeat guests and things, but yeah, over 75 authors. And I don't think I've had a single interview that I felt was disappointing.
Fantastic. 75 authors. And that's just the beginning. I'm sure there's loads more to interview. Is there a particular author that you're like, oh, I'd love to contact them, but I'm not sure whether they'll reach out?
So I really want to get Elif Shafak
Oh,
on the show.
nice.
And she has a book that's just come out a few days ago, a new one called There Are Rivers in the Sky. And she is one of my, you know how you have like a dream list?
Yes.
Like she's definitely at the top of my dream list. Every time I hear her speak, I'm just in awe, and her writing is amazing. So she's definitely somebody that I would like to get on the show. But let's see what happens with that.
I'm sure she's listening in. I'm sure she'll get in contact with you. You're definitely right about Elif Shafak. She is a tremendous writer and wonderful speaker. As are you. It's so wonderful having you on the show today. For anybody who has just tuned in, we are joined by no other than Samia Aziz. She's a book critic and she's a podcaster. And today we're talking about diverse summer reads on the show. And we're talking about podcasting as well. It is Youth International Day, and it's a real celebration for young people on today's show. And I think one thing that young people are really drawn to is podcasting. So having Sami on the show today is absolutely wonderful, because it does feel that this is a platform more and more young people are connecting to, relating to, or want to do. Can you relate to that? Do you see that happening, Samia?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the podcast space has grown massively, and I think there's so much scope for people. And I think one of the great things about having a podcast is that you can decide what you want to do with your show, and it's such an expression of creativity and individuality. Like it's really exciting to see the number of people that want to set up their own show in order to talk about things that they really care about.
Definitely. And I think a lot of young people feel that they don't have safe spaces to express themselves. They feel that maybe people are speaking over them, about them, to them, but they don't have an opportunity to speak for themselves. So podcasting is definitely a great safe space to do that. And for anybody listening in, we do have a podcast studio in Inspire FM that you can utilise, and do go onto the Facebook page or contact the Inspire FM team to find out more. It is 10:23, folks, and I'm joined by no other than Samia Aziz. She's with me all the way up to 11 o'clock on today's show, where we're talking about diverse book reads. And Samia is a book critic, and she is a podcaster, a notable podcaster. And we're going to be talking a little bit more to her about this journey. We're also asking you guys, do you have a favourite ice cream flavour? We talked about our favourite flavours. Samia's was mint. Mine is mango kulfi. And kulfi and ice cream, they are the same thing, right? I'm sure they are. We can talk about that after the show, after the break. But we've come across curry and mint as a combination, a fusion flavour. How are you vibing with that, folks? Yeah, is that something that your palate can adjust to? I don't know. You're going to have to tell me on where else. On 07779481822. Samia, before we head to the break, do you have any other ice cream combinations that you go with? And I said kulfi. Kulfi is ice cream as well, right? Is there a difference? What's the difference? Do you know? We've lost Samia. Maybe she's gone to grab an ice cream. We are heading to the break, folks. After the break, I'm joined with Samia. We're going to be talking about some books that she can recommend for you guys to read. I would love to hear from anybody who's putting pen to paper and is interested in talking more to Samia, maybe joining Samia on her podcast to share their writing journey and their books. Now, if you'd like to join in with any of the conversations on the show today, it's 07779481822. We've got a lot to talk about. We're talking ice cream, we're talking Youth International Day, and we're talking summer book reads. Is there a book that you've read that you would like to share the title with us on today's show? We're all ears, folks. We're about positively inspiring the community on Inspire FM. We're going out to Luton surrounding areas, Peterborough and Sheffield this morning. Heading to a break. After the break, join me to have more creative conversations on where else on the Urban Cube Show. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Catch a creative vibe on the Urban Cube with Sister Shamiza.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and assalamu alaikum. It is 10:30, 12th of August, and you are listening to the Urban Cube Show, brought to you on Inspire FM 105.1 FM. We're going out to Luton surrounding areas, Peterborough Salam Radio, and Sheffield's Link FM. I hope you are staying cool and hydrated wherever you are this morning. It has been a glorious weekend. The sun was beaming out, and it's going to get rather hot today as well. So stay cool, stay in the shade, and keep smiling. That's all I want to add today. I hope you well, folks. Thank you for staying with me on the second part of the Urban Cube Show, which is going on. We're beaming out to all the wonderful people across Luton, Peterborough and Sheffield this morning, and we are going all the way up to 11 o'clock with creative conversations with a fabulous guest this morning who's getting us into a book list. Inshallah, some books that we should be having on our shelves, and we're talking about diverse summer reads and also podcasting, and a brilliant combination to be had on the show because it is International Youth Celebration Day today, and a lot of young people are gravitating towards podcasting. It does seem to be the thing at the moment. So it's wonderful to have a notable podcaster who is from Luton joining us this morning, no other than Samia Aziz. She is also a book critic, and she is the founder and podcast voice and face behind the Diverse Bookshelf. So it's an absolute pleasure to have Samia on the show today, who will be talking to me about her journey on podcasting, as well as talking about tips on getting you started if you're somebody that's interested in podcasting. And we'll be catching up with some of the news stories across last week as well. Samia, thank you so very much for joining me this morning. An absolute pleasure to have your company.
Thanks so much, Shamiza. I'm so happy to be speaking to you today.
Samia, we are marking your second year in the world of podcasting. Massively congratulations to you. And I'm sure you're going to be inspiring a lot of people on this journey that you've had. Samia, just going back to maybe when you were a sprightly youngster, which you still are, but when you were maybe, say, growing up, was this an area that you ever imagined yourself to be in as a career?
Oh, that's so interesting. Not really. I think I always knew that have a passion for books and literature, but I didn't really know about the different avenues that are now open to people because things were so different, sort of 10 years ago, let's say. And I felt like maybe there were more narrow career paths and narrow things that people can do, but things are so different now. And I absolutely love the fact that I am able to spend so much of my time doing something that I love so much.
And we can hear the passion in your voice, and you can hear the passion in the space that she has created by going to it, folks. So I'm sure a lot of people want to know, where can they find you and where can they listen to you?
So you can find me on Instagram. So I have an Instagram page called Read with Samia, and there you'll find all the links to my show. I'm also on YouTube. You can just search the Diverse Bookshelf podcast and it will come up.
Now, the word diverse has been used in the title of your podcast, and that is deliberate, I understand. What, since you began to where you are now, have you seen a change in diversity and authors and publishing houses?
Yeah, definitely. I think there are more authors from like people of color, more Muslims, more Black men and women writing books, definitely. I think what we're maybe not seeing enough of is that they're still not getting the same level of attention and the same platforms that some of their white counterparts are. I mean, there is a genuine issue in that there are like hundreds of books that come out every week. So I understand that it can be difficult to make sure that everybody gets the same platform. But so I think there is definitely a change and an improvement in that sense. What I'm not entirely sure of yet is if the same level of sort of like nuance and thought is going into some of the books that are being published, because I feel like we live in a day and age where there's a lot of trends on TikTok, and that sort of stuff. And sometimes it feels like some literature coming out across the board is just sort of pandering to a certain narrative, which is disappointing.
Well, I wanted to ask you that exact question because everybody has a story to tell. But there's always the case of how well you tell the story. And we want to provide opportunities and doors for everybody to have that space. So how do you then balance that? What does one do? So are you saying that it should not just be a tick box exercise that publishing houses do have a final say on what they want to publish, right? They always want to publish a good story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, we're still up against a certain narrative about Muslims in particular. For example, I'll just speak on Muslims. We're still dealing with a certain narrative regarding the roles of men and women, regarding people's relationship with their faith, women's relationship with the hijab, violence in the household, and those sorts of things. Those representations and those sort of character tropes, if you like, still are really prominent. And it feels like books that are not telling those kind of stories, although they may now be published, are not getting enough attention, are not being supported by the major publishers or the big outlets. And it's just, I think it is about balance. I think we can have, all kinds of stories because there are a whole range of experiences within the South Asian community, within Muslim communities, and I'm not at all saying that.
And we're homogenous, aren't we? We're very different. We have different viewpoints, different interests. So there's something for everyone out there.
Yeah.
And
But I think, you've been talking a lot about it being International Youth Day, and I think what we should be thinking about is about the literature and the representation that young people have available to them.
of course,
And I remember reading this book once by a black author called Sarita Domingo. It was a collection of short stories called Who's Loving You? And in the introduction of the book, she talks about how there's not enough romance stories that feature people of color and black people. She said, so if you're a young person and all you're seeing is stories featuring white people that you can't relate to for a number of reasons, you internalize this belief that, well, those people are being loved and there's love in their households and in their marriages, but then who's loving us? Is it that we are unlovable? And I just found it so moving and also really sad.
bittersweet.
Yeah.
Bittersweet. But you raise a very, very good point there. It's like we need a mirror. And these stories need to be a little bit more evocative and really truly represent, not be a representation for what the wider audience, but a real representation of who we actually are. If, Samia, you had to write a book, what title would you give it, and what would the content be about? Have you ever thought of writing a book yourself? Just seems like an inevitable question to ask.
I do. I get asked this question a lot. And I mean, I do dabble in writing. I write a lot, also in my actual day job. But I mean, I don't know about a title, but I think I would be interested to just write about everyday experiences of Muslim women. I just think there's so much to be said about the power that we have and the lives that we lead and the friendships and the love and all just the weird and wonderful ways in which we engage with the world. I just think there's a lot to be explored.
And talking about the journey of being a visibly Muslim woman, and especially in Britain today, and this is kind of taking me to the news stories, or the news story that is really impacting the Muslim community with the far-right rioting and violence and looting we've seen across the country and the impact it's having on Muslim women and the Muslim community. Samia, your thoughts on that, and how do you feel?
Oh gosh, I have been really very upset, I think, like a lot of people, just to see the far right actions. I think, it's important to remember that it is a minority of people, but that itself says so much. That when a minority are able to influence things so massively, and that is exactly what we see when it comes to black and brown people that commit acts of violence. We see the impact that it has on the entire community. But it's been really, really sad, I think, to just see the way that the racism and hate is so rampant. And yeah, I don't know. It's left me really lost for words, really, because it's just felt so frustrating that in so many ways we are moving forward as people, as communities, in creating this really wonderful country that we should all be proud of. But then things like this happen, which is, in some ways it's inevitable because we've had policies and governments that have been fairly open about their own prejudice and racism. And it's really sad, I think.
It sure is. Please stay safe. Please keep updated with the right information on social media platforms, because there has been information that has been shared that has been false somewhere. Riots are about to take place. If you've got any queries or worries, you're very welcome to contact us in Inspire FM, and inshallah we'll direct you to the right sources. Thank you so much, Samia, for sharing your thoughts, because it is obviously a very worrying, not just for yourself, for many other people as well, all of us really, with this rhetoric and what we're seeing. But there are lots of very, very good people. They are a minority. They're not a representative of the British population. We've seen lots of groups of people that have been very supportive, very kind, and don't stand for what they represent, the far right. So, thank you for sharing that with us, Samia. Folks, you've just tuned in. You are listening to the Urban Cube Show, and I'm joined by the absolutely wonderful Samia Aziz, who is a book critic and she is a podcaster. And we are talking to her about her journey around books, podcasting, and just life in general. We've even talked about ice cream flavours. We have such quirky conversations on this show. If you've got any questions, do contact us on 07779 481822, and we'd be happy to read them out. The time is 10:44. Samia, you spoke about your day job, and you do a little bit of writing there. What is your day job? I'm so curious.
So I work in the international development sector with charities in communications. Primarily, I'm a copywriter, so I'm writing quite a lot. But yeah, I've been working for charities since it's been over 10 years now.
Wow, what an extraordinary job. And what does a copywriter do, for anybody who's not familiar with that term?
So I write all of the outward-facing sort of material for charities. So I could be writing website content, emails, and leaflets. I often script videos as well. So it's just a whole host of quite, fun and interesting writing that I get to do.
How intriguing. That's fascinating. And if there was anybody listening in today, because we're here about inspiring people, how can they go into this career?
Oh, that's interesting. So I think there's lots of ways now to become a copywriter. There's lots of courses that you can do. LinkedIn has lots of options as well of courses you can do to be a copywriter. But I think specifically within the sector, it's important to try and get a job or some volunteering experience with the charity. I think once you have that, it will open doors to you.
Fantastic. Some great tips there from Samia. Samia, I want to ask you now the burning question. What is the summer diverse book read you can suggest to us? What are the titles?
Okay, so the first one is the 30 Before 30 list.
Ooh.
By Tasneem Abdul Rashid. So, summer's a really great time for maybe more light reading, some quite fun stuff. People tend to look to read rom-coms. There's this classic image of somebody, sat on a beach with a rom-com book. And the 30 Before 30 list by Tasneem has just been out for about a month now. And it is so wonderful. It's written by a British Bengali author. And it is about a young girl called Maya, I think she's 27 or 29 in the book. And she is on the tube one day in London, and she meets this guy, and they have this whirlwind of an interaction where they're really chatting and really getting on. But as he leaves the train, they don't exchange numbers, but he drops a notebook. And in the notebook is a list of 30 things that he wants to do before he turns 30. And then that sparks Maya going on an adventure where she writes her own list of 30 things, partly in hopes of meeting this guy Noah, but also to just push herself out of her comfort zone. And we sort of follow Maya as she goes through this list, and she also, she looks for love, and yeah, it's just really wonderful.
I love the book list. That is so interesting. and really inspiring. Would you have a book list? Not a book list, a list of things to do before you're a certain age? Have you ever thought of doing that? A bucket list?
I guess my next list would be like 40 before 40 because I'm over 30 now. But I love the idea of it. I think it sounds so fun. And maybe I will put one together because I just think it's a really nice way of trying new things and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's motivating, isn't it, to do them and just having that pleasure of just ticking it off. You know what? I'd like to do something like that. Move away from the shopping list. Definitely. Share your next book read. Is there another one on the list?
Yeah, so there's a book called Playing Games by an author called Huma Qureshi. And Playing Games is about two sisters who have an interesting relationship. And one of them is a playwright. And she ends up writing a play that is unintentionally, I suppose, inspired by a conversation that she overheard between her sister and her husband. So it's really interesting about sisters and secrets, and is it okay to borrow from real life when you're creative, and it's just it's really quite wholesome, really nice book about two sisters.
And the bond between sisters is just, those that have, blessed to have a sister is crazy, isn't it? It's crazy. Mashallah. Wow, that sounds like a really good one. Any more? How many do we have? Because I want to keep an eye on the time as well so that we get...
Well, should I give you one more?
Yes, please. That'd be great.
So this is, the next book is called Yellow Face by Rebecca Kwong. It's been out, I think, now for maybe slightly more than a year, perhaps. And this is super, super fun and super interesting. Yellow Face is the story of two authors, one who is of, Chinese background, and the other who is a white author. And in a freak accident, the Chinese author, she passes away. But what the white author does is she steals her manuscript and then publishes it under her own name. So it's such a fascinating story about whether or not she is posing as somebody that she's not. Is she posing as somebody of a different ethnicity? Really interesting thoughts about diversity in publishing and representation. It is one of those books that is impossible to put down.
Wow, and what a story. How interesting that must be to read and kind of navigating that as well as a writer. Extraordinary. Wow. And they're so different. All three of these books are so different in content and so unique as well. Love it. So just give us the names of the books again, your top three, Samia, for listeners.
So we have The 30 Before 30 List by Tasneem Abdul Rashid, Playing Games by Huma Qureshi, and Yellow Face by Rebecca Kwong.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those books. Now, how long did it take you to read each of those books?
Oh, I'm not a very good person to ask because I can read a book insanely quickly or it takes me a really long time. Actually, the 30 Before 30 List, I think I enjoyed it so much and it's very readable. I read it sort of within a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Playing Games took me a little bit longer. I'd say I read it over about a week.
Okay.
And Yellow Face I also read very quickly. I think I read it over 2 days because it was one of those books, Shamiza, honestly, I felt like I wanted to eat it because it was just so good. I really wanted to find out what happened next.
You know what? That is a review and a half. It was so good. I wanted to eat it. I hope you've put a review up because that is just class. Chef's kiss. That's what I'm going to give you there. How extraordinary. Gosh, that's really tempted me to go and grab that book. But I'm not going to eat it. Eating books is not good. You know, I'm a bit of a bibliophile, and I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. I buy books and just keep them on the shelf. I mean, you know where people like hide their shopping clothes. Like, I have to hide books from my children because, like, Mummy, you brought a new book, you just put it on the bookshelf and you haven't read it. Are you actually going to read these books? I don't know if you've had that experience, but it sounds like you don't because you read your books, so well done. We've got 2 minutes left on the show, Samia. It goes by so quickly. Samia, I want you to tell our listeners any tips for podcasting and just life in general for our young listeners.
Yeah, I think I guess there's like a mix one. If there's something you really want to do, if you have an idea for something that is creative and like a podcast, I think we can often stand in our own way. We convince ourselves that we're not good enough, or we don't have the right equipment, or we don't know the right thing that we need to do. And we stand in our way so much. I think it's important to quieten those voices and just give it a go. Because at that point, when you're right at the beginning, there's nothing to lose. If it doesn't work, you have learned so much from the fact that it doesn't work. And if it does work, it will be absolutely amazing. So I think if you have an idea for something, regardless of whether or not you think it's going to be a quote unquote success, or whether or not you think there are other people doing podcasts, so why should I also do one? Ignore those voices because it's just doubt, and just do it. Because the reality is that although there may be hundreds and thousands of podcasts now, at the moment there isn't one by you. And we don't know what would happen when you put your one out into the world.
Wonderful. And well, I am so glad you put yours out to the world, and massive big congratulations on the success, the second year of your podcasting journey. May it continue and grow bigger, and you get more followers and listeners. You're really making an impact. Samia, we've got 41 seconds. Give us your Instagram handle before you go.
So you can find me on Read with Samia, but also the Diverse Bookshelf Pod.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much, Samia, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Shamiza.
That was the absolutely wonderful Samia Aziz, who spoke to us so eloquently about her passion for podcasting and diverse book reading. It is an International Youth Day, and I hope that inspired all our listeners, young and old. We are heading to the end of the show. Thank you so very much for joining me, as always, and inshallah, catch you next week, same time, same place. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at InspireFM Luton.